Dear everyone, welcome to Arctic Europe Tourism Cluster's Tech Week. We have a full week of very interesting webinars in store for you, and today we're going to talk about web analytics and GDPR compliance with our experts from TRI. We have Kristoffer here online to do this part for you. My name is Marika Tiikkaja. I'm one of the project managers for this Interreg Aurora funded project. I'm very pleased to meet all of you. If you are not familiar with our AETC project yet, worry not. I will pop you a few useful links to the chat later on when we are going forward with this webinar and towards the end. Today, with our topic, we're going to have a lot of insight in the world of web analytics. And after the presentation, which is about 1 hour, you will have some time for your questions and comments as well. As you've noticed, we have disabled your cameras, but the microphones you are free to use by raising your hand and opening your mic and making the question for Kristoffer and Simen also, who is here from TRI behalf. Or then you can write your questions and comments to the chat, and I'm more than happy to deliver them to our experts today. But without further ado, I'm going to let Kristoffer and also Simen here to take the arena with our today's topic. Do enjoy the ride.
Thank you very much, Marika. Hello, everyone. I'm Kristoffer, and I'll be the host for the next hour. I have worked within web analytics and data compliance for the last 10 or 12 years. Is there an echo already? No, I've been working within the field for the last 10 to 12 years in different consultancies, working with everything from two-person companies to some of the biggest companies across the Nordics. So I hope that field of experience brings something to the table today. I'm currently working as the head of data and business intelligence at TRI. We are situated in Oslo, and with me today I have Simen. He's your chat man today. He's available in the chat throughout the presentation, and he will be helping out with the practical application at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, we have a fairly comprehensive agenda for you today. So we have tried to create an introduction into the field of web analytics. It's a comprehensive and quite wild field with changes occurring very quickly. But what we're trying to do today is to give you, firstly, an introduction into web analytics. We'll be looking at why you should do this. We'll be looking at a couple of platforms. We will move on to interpretation of the data. What is, for instance, attribution modeling? We will be looking at some other tools to better analyze how your customers act, or at least differently analyze that. We will be looking at how to improve your website before we move into a legal section. Now, keep in mind that I'm not a lawyer. As far as I know, Simen isn't a lawyer either. This isn't legal advice, but this is what we would advise our customers to do. So we are trying to give you a crash course in the legal frameworks and relevant legal applications within web analytics. And in no way is that a comprehensive framework or legal advice. So moving through that, how do you do this in a legal and safe manner? We will end off the webinar with a practical application. So with the guidance of Simen, we have created some AI tools for you that will hopefully get you going and create some both prioritized lists and some tools that will help you out on your analytics journey. So I think it's important to note that the presentation today is a introduction into web analytics. It's not a in-depth guide on how to navigate or get the most out of Google Analytics, for instance. So my advice to you would be to work in tandem with an LLM or an AI. I hope that you get an introduction that you know which tools to use and how to set them up, and hopefully what to look for in the tools. But if you move to, we use Claude, for instance, and ask how to do something, surely the platform will help you to navigate the platforms and find out how to set up reports, etc. if you need that. So with that being said, welcome to From Guesswork to Growth. So this is a very preliminary introduction into web analytics. I'd like to firstly touch on the data advantage. I find this is a topic that quite often turns up in conversation with the customers I work with. Why should we even start working with web analytics? Why should we even start gathering data? We are busy enough as it is. So I think it's firstly important to acknowledge that you are in the people business. You are relying on customers to purchase experiences or stays or products and packages from you. And in order to better suit their needs and to keep them happy, but also to keep buying more stuff, it's important to understand who they are. What do they like? What are they looking for? And how did they even find you to begin with? As two niche examples of this, I worked with a small guest house on the western coast of Norway on how they could keep scaling their company. They were struggling with not enough bookings and were not seeing a clear reason why they shouldn't be fully booked when they saw that other similar companies in that region had higher bookings than them. And for us, it was as simple as seeing that most of the traffic they actually attracted came from Instagram, but they focused very little of their efforts and money on Instagram as a channel. So by just acknowledging that Instagram was an important source of traffic and new customers for them, we were able to better set up that and increase the importance and resources that Instagram received for them. And in turn, their bookings increased 40% year on year. As another example, I worked with a tour operator out of the south of Norway that were seeing over time that they were struggling with people navigating and buying on a mobile phone on their website. So we quickly found out that the booking button wasn't even visible on a mobile device, which obviously makes it quite difficult to book. So just implementing that button correctly made their bookings go up by 15 or 20%, since a lot of people wasn't that frustrated and had to switch from a mobile to desktop, etc. So the goal today is to give you a better understanding of the behavior of the customers you are attracting and a better understanding of why they are looking at you and how they are interacting with your digital platforms, essentially. So the theme of this presentation will largely be how do you generate data? How do you turn that data into insights? How do you turn the insights into decisions? And how do you actually act on that decisions? Most companies struggle with that part and it stops somewhere, but we're hoping to sketch out the full flow of it. And as an asterisk, and this is probably a massive exaggeration, but I think it's important to do this without ending up in prison. The likelihood of anyone here ending up in prison is fairly low, but I should clarify that breaking legal frameworks could incur fines. So I think it's important to do the best you can to mitigate those risks. We say that the data is the great equalizer. I think it's important to note that the largest companies in the Nordics will have more resources, they will have more data, more platforms, more people available to them. So it's natural to assume that they have the upper hand when it comes to data. I would often disagree with that. What I've seen is that at the major companies, there's too much time and resources put into the technical side of it. How do we set up platforms? How do we collect the correct data? And not enough time on the actual process of turning data into insights and that into decisions. The way from just a simple insight to an implementation of something on your site or a change in the marketing plan is often long, and many of the ideas just die on their way because people get tired of trying to change something. I think that's a massive advantage in the SMB industry, where the sort of process from this is something I want to do to it being live is a lot shorter. I would be as bold as to say that most of your competitors and most of the companies across the Nordics are largely guessing. They're making decisions based on gut feelings and assumptions that often prove incorrect. And I think you should know more than that. I think you should know why your customers are booking. You should know not just geographically where they're coming from, but where did they find you? Why are they leaving the page you've set up to attract more customers? Why are some customers repeat customers, but not others? Or even how they came to find your company or offering in the first place. I think there's a secondary advantage, which is very important and ties in with the whole presentation, and that is that we are living in an age where there is an abundance of data, but there's also an abundance of skepticism. What we're seeing is that smaller companies, especially within the SMB sector, and then particularly family-owned companies, are more trusted by customers. And as a consequence, people are more willing to give you data in a trade of some sorts for a better offering, a better recommendations to get offers from that company. I think that is a massive advantage on your end, and you should just strive to take care of that trust and don't break it. So without that being said, let's move on to the fundamentals. I'd first like to apologize for this terrible AI generated pictures, but it is what it is. Also, as a note, the AI couldn't even spell restaurant correctly. So I think AI is a massive gain for all companies, but please double check some of the results. I know we should have before we went live with this. So I think I have said a little bit of why you should care about this. By understanding your companies and the behavior your companies are having, I think it's easier to attract more customers, have more happy customers, and to perform better as a company. But what exactly is web analytics? Web analytics is a subset of analytics, and it largely consists of the gathering of data from your potential customers or existing customers from digital platforms. It is in many ways similar to a nosy receptionist. It's someone standing on your web page noting where people are coming from. It's noting down what they are looking at. It's noting down how people are interacting with your website. Are they having problems with anything? What are they doing? Are they happy with it? And that is a list you will receive at the end of the day. So it's essentially gathering information about all your customers, but instead of doing it in a physical form, you're doing it online. And while that might sound very niche and strange, I find it's an incredible insight into the customer journey, and also a field where there's massive opportunities for improving your business and attracting more customers. So if you start Googling how to get started with web analytics, what should I be looking at in web analytics, you'll find thousands of guides, and I find most of them are overcomplicating this. I think most of them these are 27 different metrics you should be following on a daily basis, or here is 14 different scripts to improve how you track scroll rate. I find most of that is interesting, but largely unnecessary, and you are overcomplicating things. And largely when we are overcomplicating things, we have at least a tendency to postpone it and find another way to do it. So my recommendation would be to ignore all of that, at least for the time being. If you manage to focus on these 4 key points, I find you're most of the way already. I think you should know where your bookings are coming from and what's actually driving traffic. And that's both on a campaign level or a source level or on a device level. You should have a overarching view on booking conversion rates. So what is your conversion rates for desktop versus mobile, for instance? What's your conversion rates for the different offerings you have, or even from different sources? That tells you something about what you should focus on going forward. I would highly suggest having a view of peak research time, both in a time of day and with seasonality in mind. That tells you something about the period before the peak research time is where you should expose all your potential customers to your marketing or communication. And you should have a good view of what content is both driving bookings and visitors. Hopefully you are producing content with the aim of selling more products. And then you should see what am I producing that's actually have an impact on sales, and also what am I producing of content that has an increase in traffic. If we know all of these things, I think you're pretty far along and you don't need to overcomplicate it to get started. So it's important to note that a customer journey is complex. I think we are working with some numbers saying that people are exposed to over 1,000 ads a day or 1,000 messages or pieces of communication. And it's important to note that a web analytics platform are by definition looking at what's happening on your site. For some products, that's almost the length of the customer journey. If you're in the business of selling wool socks at a major warehouse, it's a pretty short customer journey from it's a hole in my sock to I purchase something, as opposed to traveling to the Arctic Circle. So I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a customer journey that takes a lot of time, and it's not largely not impulse driven. So your customers will have interactions with you across a width of platforms, and not all of them will be visible in your web analytics stack. So for instance, you have business managers, etc. for social media that will tell you most you need to know about how people are interacting with your ads, what they find interesting or what they are ignoring. Similarly, we have tools for research and comparison phase. You could use, for instance, Google Trends to see what people are looking for. There are different platforms that are sort of meta platforms that look at what type of companies are you competing with and where is the traffic going. But looking at the bookings and reviews will largely be on your own face platforms. So just keep in mind that this isn't the full customer journey. There's something happening before this, and largely that's a more emotional phase. We often use a framework called KISS, keep it simple, stupid, and that's not an insult. We don't need to overcomplicate this. If you don't have a web analytics platform up and running, set it up. We'll have a quick how-to later today, and just set it up and ensure that it's collecting data. If you already have that in place, move to week 2. Have a look at where your traffic is coming from. Week 3, have a look in a couple of different reports on what pages you have are actually leading to bookings. And hopefully in that process, you'll find some sort of quirk that is reducing conversion rates. So make one improvement to your site. This doesn't need to be a full-time position. It doesn't need to drain all your resources, and it doesn't need to be a concern that's hanging over you. So if you make this easier, it's more likely that you will do it. So let's have a look at platforms. Some of you are wondering why I'm using dark backgrounds possibly for slides. That's because of this. It hurts. This is the MarTech map of 2025, updated in May. This is a yearly updated map of most of the tools, at least in the marketing technology landscape. I think it passed 21,000 tools this year, up from I think 14,000 5 years ago or something. So it's a pretty exponential growth. As you can see, it is massive. I would not recommend buying all of this, and they all have their own carved out niche. For today, we're looking at just a very small subset of the blue column on the right side, the data. So as you can see, it's obviously I could cover 1,000 tools today, but I've chosen to focus on a few just as examples. And if you want other options, there are surely a lot of them to pick from. I would focus on the most popular platforms as they have the most support available online, but also focusing on very cheap or even free tools. And just keep in mind that they are free for a reason. So oftentimes it's to commercialize something. So within Web Analytics, there are a lot of different platforms, and they all have a different focus. Within the last 4 or 5 years, platforms like Matomo and Pivot Pro has exploded in popularity due to their focus on compliance and ensuring that the data is as anonymous as possible, but also stored within the EU. So if that is really important for you, I would have a look at one of those platforms. Those could be, as a warning, those could be expensive if you pass the threshold for data on a monthly basis. But that's something they will help you sketch out, and it's surely somewhere to start. You have other platforms like Amplitude, which focus on product analytics. It's a completely different way to structure data, which makes it for sort of something like a e-com vendor or something. There's a really good option that makes it easier to analyze the product within the customer journey within a product, but also if you sell something like a SaaS service, it's really good at product analytics. And then we obviously have Google Analytics, which is the most popular platform in the world. So for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to be focusing on Google Analytics. And just keep in mind that the other platforms that you have available to you will have similar reports and similar functionality. They just might be named something different. But for just scratching the surface today, I think it's easy enough to find out what they will be called in a different platform. So when you open up Google Analytics, you'll see something like this. So all of the digital breadcrumbs we talked about earlier is sort of aggregated up to this. This is a snapshot of Try's Google Analytics. And as you can see on the top left corner, in the period I looked at, we had 4,900 active users on our site. And out of those, 4,200 were new users. So a user can be one out of two things. It's either new or returning. I should clarify that you will be one of those things. You will only be one of those things. So either it's the first time you come to the site or you're a returning visitor. And a visitor can have many sessions. So if I visit this page every day this week, I will generate 7 sessions, but it will only be one returning user. So I would recommend to look at sessions instead of users. And that is also partly because platforms like this are reliant on cookies for recognizing users, and there are a lot of limitations on cookies that makes the cookie timeout period both fairly short now, but also varying depending on the browser of choice. So I find it's easiest to look at, I have a quick gauge on sort of what is my percentage new user to returning user, but largely for my analytics purposes, I look at sessions. As you can see, the average engagement time is a minute. Spending a minute on the pilot page is quite good. We're happy with that. You can see that by some reason, we are mostly getting our visitors in the last 30 minutes from Germany. We have a mapping on the top right side of both new users and sessions where they are coming from. Organic search is searching on Google. Direct traffic is writing try.no in the URL. Paid search is ads, either through Bing or through Google. Referral is more affiliate, so that is some partner of us having a link to our site. Organic social is posts on social media, etc. This is good because it gives us an insight into how our customers or potential customers are actually finding our site. In the middle left, we'll see where the active users are in the country, and that can be split down into regions of your country, etc. So it's a good view of where you are getting most of your visitors at any given time. We have user activity over time, split by different media, but also on the right-hand side, we have which page titles are they looking at? What's our most popular content? Due to cropping, we've missed out screen class on this image, but I will tell you something about the size of the screen they're looking at. And on the bottom left, we will see through what Google Analytics 4 calls events, what people are actually doing on our site. So you can see user engagement, session start, etc. Those are always triggered, but also a lot of people scrolling and clicking. And a lot of people are looking at the open positions we have available at any given time. This is something you can set up to track whatever you want. And I highly recommend setting up because that gives you a much better insight into people's behavior. So while we won't get too narrow in how to set this up, there's hundreds of guides for it, and the LLM can help you. It's as simple as creating an account, add the tracking code to your page, and either yourself, if you're fairly technical, or your local web person can help you with adding the tracking code. Set up booking as a conversion, wait a couple of days and it should show up in the event view. If you want to, you can exclude your own visits if either you or your company is spending a lot of time in your own website. And if you have a Search Console account, I would suggest linking that to Google Analytics. That would give you insight into what sort of organic searches people are looking for and then arriving at your site. So I should clarify what's the tracking code. Setting up the platform by itself won't do anything. It needs to start collecting data, and it does that through a small script or a snippet that is on your page. Sometimes you can add it through the CMS, but maybe it has to be added through something called Google Tag Manager. It's fairly simple to set up, and it gives almost immediately Google Analytics data. I've seen accounts struggle with no data because they haven't set up this part, so I just like to stress this is literally critical. So the account is up and running, we have some data in it, and how do you proceed from there? I would make it as simple as these 3 reports to get started. The acquisition report will tell you where people are coming from. It's really important. The engagement report will tell you about how they are behaving on your site. And the monetization report will tell you about what is driving bookings or sales. Now, the monetization report requires some sort of e-com setup. And if you don't have that in place and you just have, for instance, bookings as an event, that's fine. And you can report on that in the engagement report instead. There are literally 50 or so reports within Google Analytics. Waiting a couple of weeks and then having a look through them is interesting, but don't be overwhelmed by it. If you have a top-down view of these 3 reports, I think you're far along, and it's more about trying to understand the data you're already finding there. So congratulations, you're now an analyst. For those of you who don't want to be outside anymore, this is great news, and you can now start being an analyst full-time, or you can use some of the system prompts we will be providing later. I've found personally that exporting data from Google Analytics as a CSV, uploading that into Claude, which we use, and then start asking questions about that data. What are my most profitable channels? Is there somewhere on the site my clients are struggling? What should I improve, etc.? Usually gives very good questions. No, very good answers, sorry. So you don't need to spend all of your time trying to analyze this data. There are now tools available which can do that. And also remember that GA, at the very least, has a query bar on top, which you can ask questions to, and it will use an LLM to answer the questions as a report. Good. So let's move on to what marketing works. We are now moving into measurement, which is absurdly complex, but let's have a quick glance at how it works. So if you remember from my previous example, you could see that we, as it is on the left-hand side there as well, Google Analytics is telling us where the people are arriving from, what sort of source. Either organic search, direct, unassigned referral, etc. Some platforms are setting this automatically, but it actually needs some work for the rest of them. This data is ingested through something we call UTMs. This looks complex, but it's absolutely critical, especially for paid campaigns, emails, or any activity you push out there. If you don't have this tracking, the traffic could show up as either unassigned or direct. And for most of the either partnership marketing or paid marketing, it's fairly important to be able to separate the traffic that the activity generates and not have it just show up in a generic direct report. So the three most important fields is just UTM source, UTM medium, and UTM campaign. And the added bonus of this is that you can do a Christmas campaign across maybe YouTube, paid search, and Snapchat. And if they have the same UTM campaign parameter, you can set up one report for the full campaign. So it's able to aggregate it all and show you what happens from each of the channels. There are plenty of free available tools that can help you do this, such as utmbuilder.net. And we're also supplying a prompt to help you out. Now, have a quick look at UTM guides online if you want, and they'll give you some suggestions of what should be in, for instance, UTM medium, as this should be pretty static over time. But this also touches on one of the larger issues, and that is what we call attribution modeling. This ties in with the interpretation of the data. And since GA, as you could see in the last session, said that there are some sessions arriving from this source, it will also do the same for sales. This is pretty important to understand, as it could be made wrong decisions based on this material. So I'm assuming most of your clients have a pretty long customer journey. So if I, for instance, see a national campaign on TV for Northern Lights and going to the Arctic Circle on TV, and I find it interesting. Looks like a cool family holiday. That's something I want to do at some point, but I don't do anything about it. And then a few weeks later, I start getting ads online, possibly through social media, telling me about different vendors or regions or something similar. And I find it interesting. I click on some of them. I start Googling a little. I end up on a couple of sites, sign up for the newsletter just to stay in the loop if they have some offers or campaigns or special events. So after maybe a couple of months or of different mails, I've decided to, yeah, this is something we want to do. So I start searching online for offers, and I finally book with one of the vendors, or possibly several of the vendors. It's pretty hard to say which of these activities generated that sale. I wouldn't have possibly started looking without the TV and social media ads. So are those responsible for the sale? Or is it the email that made me start looking once that emotion or trigger was already in place? This is a field of its own. There are literally people with doctorates working full time on this. Just keep in mind that the effect funnel or evaluation funnel is long, and with a web analytics platform, you'll be looking at the sort of bottom levels of this. So it's very natural that Google Analytics or similar platforms will report paid search as the most effective marketing channel you have. But that's also because the user is taking an active step to search for a vendor and find your ads. You don't search for something without being exposed to something first or having a need in the first place. So just keep in mind that there's a lot in the marketing funnel that isn't trackable by web analytics. So just be mindful of how you interpret that data. It's a great platform for evaluating traffic drivers and for customer behavior. I wouldn't recommend it as a single source of truth for all of your marketing. I would rather set up a simple framework where you say, I'm having some videos posted online. Those are emotional by nature, so I'll evaluate success on them based on view time and impressions. And maybe I'm doing some more sales activities, and I evaluate those on the traffic they drive. And then I'm having a bunch of paid search ads, and those should be by definition measured on bookings. So what we recommend to our users or clients is to start testing What happens if I turn something off and on? I acknowledge that that's difficult, and it's more difficult when there is a longer customer journey. Cool. So I am a visual person. I love working in Google Analytics, but that's a statistical representation of data. I think in support with that, I also like to have a more visual representation of the data that is generated. So we're looking at two different tools for that today. They're called heat maps and session recordings. So there are an abundance of tools that is available for this purpose. Microsoft Clarity is, I would recommend that, to be quite frank. It's free, it's good, it's made by a reputable company, and it's has more than enough functionality to cover most of your needs. So if you at some point find Clarity lacking, I think that's the time to look for a new solution, not necessarily right now. Secondly, we have tools like Hotjar. You can do something on their free tier, but you quite quickly move to the growth tier, and that's about $50 a month. Now, I think there's slightly better insights and analytics from it, but also that you can do chat and surveys. So you can have a pop-up on your site that says, are you struggling with finding something? Do you need to talk to someone, etc.? And you get some insights out of that. Thirdly, we have complex solutions like Crazy Egg. I don't think it's the correct tool for the job right now, but I think it's important to mention since we will be touching on A/B testing later. It's important to keep a whole map of all the activities you are doing, so you don't buy a single tool for every purpose. So if you want to do A/B testing as well, that Crazy Egg could be a cheaper tool than buying something only for A/B testing if you're also doing heat maps and session recordings. So some visual examples. Heat maps, as you can see, is an aggregate of the behavior on a page. On the left-hand side, you'll see a click map. I find it's really interesting and gives you a very precise view of how people are clicking on a specific website, and even on a specific page, I mean. So you can see here that they're visually clicking on the images and on the top bar. I find it's a good way to see if there's some links or buttons that are ignored, and then starting to look into why. It could be the links aren't clear enough, it could be that they need a different phrasing, or it could even be that your buttons are largely invisible. In the middle, we have scroll maps. I would highly suggest setting up scroll maps immediately. And as you can see from this example, red is 100% of users, blue is less than 10, I think. And just from this example here, we can see that there's a lot of people bouncing or leaving the page without scrolling at all. And that tells us that the hero image, what you immediately see on the page, is your most important real estate. How can you optimize that to ensure that you get the interest so that people start scrolling and looking into it? For this page, it seems like 30% is going away immediately. And if so, I would recommend making the hero image shorter or thinner and having a sales pitch on the right-hand side. Just something that engages with them so they start scrolling. Interestingly enough as well, on the bottom of this page, you can see the subscribe to the newsletter function. And it seems that maybe 5% of users is actually seeing that. So if the subscribe to our newsletter functionality of the page was higher up, they would get a lot more subscribers, and as a consequence would reach out through a free channel to a lot more of their customers. I worked with the Norwegian mail services for many years, and one of their principles when designing new pages is that it should be a zero scroll page. They found out that most of the people that contacted them through customer services hadn't even scrolled. So just shortening down the pages, making them very concrete and to the point, made the customers more happy and the people at customer services less stressed out with questions that were already answered on the page. Moving to the right, we have the move map. Largely useless, and I wouldn't recommend using it. There's been numerous studies on this, and there's less than 8% correlation between mouse movement and eye movement, which mouse movement should be a proxy for. So what we're generally finding is that move map shouldn't dictate many choices, and I would focus on the click map and scroll map. As a side point, one of the vendors we will touch on later is called VWO. They have a free heat map audit through a AI tool available on their site. You don't have to submit any personal data about your customers. It's just an AI generated report. I would highly suggest doing that. I've done it for several clients and the results are very good. That will give you a good starting point for how should I make some changes to my site. Session recordings is an absolutely brilliant tool that has become a lot better within the last few years. So while heat maps are an aggregate of behavior on a certain page, session recordings are on a user basis. So you can say, I want to record 100 people that go through my purchasing funnel, but don't buy anything. And I want all of them to be on a mobile phone, for instance, and you'll get to view a lot of the sessions, what they're struggling with, how they're moving the mouse, what they're looking for, how they're scrolling, etc. I find it's a brilliant tool for understanding customer journey. And this used to be very time consuming, going through hundreds of videos. Luckily, tools like Microsoft Clarity now has an AI analytics tool that, based on prompts, will generate insights based on the full amount of videos. Just keep in mind that when you set this up, please set up the option to remove input fields. You don't want to collect data here on emails, card numbers, telephone numbers, names, etc. So you can automatically just scramble those fields, and I will highly recommend that. This is a very cool tool to double check hypothesis or dig deeper into problems you find in either heat maps or with in Google Analytics. Now, explorative analytics is difficult, so I've tried to give some suggestions for what you should look into. I would highly recommend looking into load time. Try Google PageSpeed, free report. It gives you a report of your page, how slow it is, or what's causing it to be slow, or if everything is good. Most people are bouncing out fairly quickly if the page takes ages to load. And then it's a simple list of what we should address first. Is your hero image taking too much space, as we talked about? Check your scroll report. You can filter by devices to see why people are struggling with their conversions on specific devices. Or you can look in Google Analytics for these are the pages that people aren't finding or very few people can finding, and then you can see people finding the pages through the session recordings and see maybe the entry to that page, the URL to that page is too hard to find, etc. So this is largely problem solving. Trying to make a commercial endpoint out of this is what we call conversion rate optimization. That brings us over to the section on small tests and big results. This is called A/B testing, split testing. And I think this is a bad suggestion for you, but I think it's important to touch on it regardless. And I'll get back to why in a second. Split testing is tools like Crazy Egg that sets up a test on your page, splits all visitors into two groups. One group sees the base page, what it looks like now, and the second group sees the variant of the page. So maybe you thin down your hero image and have a sales pitch, and then you can see how that impacts conversion rates. Incredibly useful as a means of finding out if a change on your site is actually driving more sales or creating a higher conversion rate. But they're all based on statistical significance. And that means you might need 1,000 sales for it to say, yeah, we have a statistical significant change and we would recommend variant B. Now, this is a powerful tool, but if it means that you're setting up one test and waiting 9 months or a year for that test to be valid, I think a better way to go about it is just making small iterative tests on your page and see if it changes the parameter you want. And then you can grow into this when you have more traffic, Or you could stop looking at conversion rate and instead make changes based on event parameters. So say I'm changing the menu structure to see if more people are reaching a page 2. And that's a more people will do that as opposed to sales. That will sort of reduce the time to a significant result. So I think it's important in that term to recognize that CRO is not a tool, but it's a process. You don't need to set up massive tests. You can just go about this in a more lightweight manner and just focus on these 3 things. Faster load times, that's absolutely crucial. Make bookings as easy as humanly possible and add some sort of trust signal to your page. So this field used to be dominated by Google Optimize, which was free and pretty good. That's been sunset. So now there is harder to find good tools. I would do it manual if I was just starting out and had low traffic. If this is important, I would try Growthbook, which we use internally and find works very well for our clients. If you want sort of a mid-tier solution, VVO is really good and offers a lot of really interesting tests. And if you want more of a comprehensive suite, an experience suite, you can look at stuff like Optimizely. I wouldn't start there. If this becomes critical to your business operation, that's interesting. But just to start off, look at the free tier and see how that gets you most of the way. And just some case studies that I worked with just to have a look. So as we touched on, if you move booking buttons higher up on the page, more people will see them, and that usually corresponds to a higher number of conversions. I've seen from the companies I've worked with that just having a show availability on the first page, so reducing the funnel and the steps required, makes more people check if there's something available at all and just increases the chances of sales. And also having an easy way for people to interact with you, either through chat or sending a message. If you make that as easy as possible, I found that more people are reaching out, and the people that either reach out to you or search your site have a much higher conversion rate than the rest of your traffic. So if you manage to get them into that, there's a high probability sales will increase. So that was the commercial part. And now we're moving on to the fun part, maybe the consent management and the legal issues that ensues. So I think we've all seen a lot of this over the last few years. I think we can collectively say we hate them. They're terrible. Ironically, all of the examples here are illegal, which I acknowledge is a bad example. But this is what we call cookie pop-ups. As we touched on in the first section of the webinar, Google Analytics and the other tools here will use cookies for tracking people or tracking behavior or recognizing returning users, etc. And to do that, you need a consent from a person. And that's done through these platforms. Now, there was a hearing in the EU a month ago, and the EU is now looking into changing the consent from being on a browser level instead of on a page level. I think that would largely eliminate a lot of the problems, and then I wouldn't have to click on this every single time I opened a new page. So we call them CMPs, consent management platforms. There are hundreds of options. I would trust your local vendor with whatever they have experience with. Whatever they have set up multiple times is what will be cheapest to you most of the time. They're all quite equal in functionality. Essentially, it's a platform that creates a pop-up on your page where people can approve or decline being tracked. That platform, this is absolutely critical, needs to be integrated with your MarTech stack so that it actually adjusts the tracking by tools. If you're doing this in a commercial eye, so it's the analytics or for marketing, you need an approval for it if it's collect PII, personal identifiable data. I'm sorry, this example is in Norwegian. There are laws regulating this. That's the e-com law in all countries. You're not allowed to manipulate behavior on this. It needs to be equally easy to approve and decline. and you can contact your data protection agency for information on this. I would highly suggest that you check what they say and follow their guidelines to ensure you're not breaking any laws. And as a bypoint here, it's as long as this is set up in the correct way, this will also help you with the privacy policy. Cookiebot, etc. can generate privacy policy based on the tools you have implemented and some questions you answer. So I also suggest looking at some of the biggest actors in your industry to see how they are solving it, to get some input into how this should be. It should be as clearly and straightforward as possible. So as you can see, we've already talked about a bunch of different tools, and please keep in mind that every time you add a new tool to your stack, you should have a quick audit on that tool, put it into an Excel sheet or Word document, and just write off what you note down. You should have a list of all your tools that are collecting data, what are they collecting, etc. Because every time you implement something, it's a risk to you and your customers. And we will get back to the documentation framework for that in a couple of minutes. So, the legal landscape. As it turns out, people have rights. For the longest time, web analytics disregarded this and just collected all possible data. And that was great for generating insights, but not really fair to the users themselves. All your users have a right to transparency. They have a right to access the data you're storing on them and to delete the personal data you have on them. If you are collecting data for essentially commercial purposes, they have a right to consent to that. If it's they don't have to consent if they're buying a stay, then you need that data on legal grounds. And you need a privacy policy that clearly states what you're going to do with the data, how it's stored, what sort of platforms touches it, etc. And then you need organizational tools that ensure that you live these rules. So if you say you're going to delete the data every 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, you need to actually do it. It doesn't help to just write it down. And lastly, and I would like to stress this, we have this as a separate point later, document everything. That's a key point I found, and we have some frameworks for that as well. AI Act, I know it's a separate webinar on that. I'm not going to say much, but I get a lot of questions since most of the web analytics tools now have AI functionality. The AI Act and sort of high-risk systems only come into practice if the AI makes important decisions for you. So if you set up tools like this that does pricing based on data, etc., automatically you are in the risk zone, and I would talk to a lawyer. I think that's smartest. Similarly with rejecting bookings based on credit scores and similar. If you're just using this with anonymous data for analytics or writing emails or marketing material, you're fine. Please get a paid subscription for your LLM of choice, and please turn off that the model is trained on your data. We find that's largely no benefit to you whatsoever. So, having been in several discussions with Datatilsynet in Norway, Data Protection Agency, they want compliance, they don't want perfection, and they don't expect perfection. Especially as a small company, I think you'll get some flexibility on it. Show good faith, document everything, don't try to bend the rules, and be sensible, and just do this to the best of your abilities, and reach out if you have any questions to your local data protection agency. They are very helpful, in every single interaction with them. I've been positively surprised. But in order to do that, you have to protect yourself. That means documenting everything. We've set up these 5 questions, and I said that if you have below 3 out of 5, you should reconsider the platform. I think this might be changed to 5 out of 5, to be honest. When you are implementing a new tool or a new platform, now what does it collect? What sort of data does it collect? Does it even collect any sensitive data? If not, you're off the hook. If it's collecting sensitive data, where is it stored and processed? Is it EU? Is it China? Is it the US? I think it's important to note down, and you should have that in your privacy policy and at least in your documentation. If a user requests that you delete that data, can you do it? You absolutely should be able to do that. Is there a DPA, a data processing agreement? I would say that's mandatory. All the tools I work with have that if it touches personal identifiable data. And you should be able to explain the tool or platform fairly simply on a top level to your customers. I have here supplied, with the gracious help of Simon, a prompt for creating the documentation on your platforms. You should have an overview of what it is, what's the purpose of this data, what sort of data is being gathered, on what legal basis are you collecting this data. That is something you need to decide on your own. It shouldn't be generated by an LLM. Look up legal basis for data processing and you'll get the various options, and you need to know very specifically which one you land in. And then at what point did you review this? So, data processing agreements, all platforms have them. If it doesn't have this, you shouldn't use the platform. It says something about how they'll protect the data, what their roles are, and it's literally a legal document that specifies requirements and needs on both parties. If a platform doesn't have this, you shouldn't use the tool. I think it's important to stress that many platforms such as Google Analytics, you don't receive this in the mail and they ask you to sign it. It's a part of the account creation. And then you have an option in the interface to say, this is the data processing agreement. Please approve by clicking this button. So if you start looking for them, they will many times be in the admin phase of the tool you are using at any given time. And lastly, the compliance checklist. So I want you all to check that when you go out of this meeting, you have a consent banner active and it's integrated with the actual tools. You've set up GA4, preferably in anonymous mode, and you can find guidance on that in an LLM or a guide on Google. You have DPAs signed with all your vendors. Your privacy policy reflects what you actually do and how you work with data. You have an internal agreement on how you work with data. You don't share raw data, it's deleted on a frequent basis, etc. And that's something that needs to be revised. I think it's important to stress that all of these are living documents. It's not something you do and forget. This has to be maintained. Same goes for privacy policy. That's a document that's alive and you need to iterate on a frequent basis when your needs or something else changes. Okay, so let's move on to the practical application of this webinar.
Should we do some questions first, Kristoffer, if there is any? And
fire away.
There is one question that is already written in the chat. It's from Sweden regarding the chapter on the dashboard of Google Analytics. Is a visit coming via the AI suggestion on the SERP part of the organic search, or where should we see these metrics? I mean, it's a tricky question, but so the question is, when you look when you get the AI suggestion on top of Google.
That's an incredibly good question, and it has several answers. So I've found while testing that it will show up in varying places, often indirect. What it often will do is that it will have a specific, not a UTM, but an ID in the URL, which you can easily identify. But I think it's also important to note that you can set up server-side tracking that actually has a look, and there's platforms for this, as we discussed briefly earlier today, Simon, that will track when LLMs are even looking at your page to respond to questions.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, and I'd say this is a major gap in the platforms they are working to solve now, in how to clarify what the role of essentially an LLM is in the customer journey. But to be straightforward, it can end in several lots. I've primarily seen them in direct.
Perfect. And and also written a little answer in the chat in terms of alternatives that you can check out. Darkvisitors.com, for example, a competitor that also tracks the scraping when the bot scrapes to train their models, or if the user asks ChatGPT either has the information already or it scrapes the site. So these are metrics that we hope to see in the big platforms soon. Are there any other questions?
Yes, everyone, now would be a perfect time if you have something on your minds over this.
I think, Marika, isn't it correct that you are also, have you already had the webinar about the generative engine optimization or AI engine optimization, or is that the webinar that you're going to have?
We had the search engine optimization webinar yesterday, so that is already live on our YouTube channel. And everyone who has signed up on any of our webinars, you will get the whole bundle at the end of the full tech week. So we have the SEO part there, and then we have the bit which is diving in deeper into the law perspective. It will be tomorrow, Thursday, during the afternoon.
Interesting.
I will actually pop these to the chat box as well, so you can have a look. And there you go. So you can already see the recorded ones on our YouTube. And if you want to register on the webinars we still have this week, you can jump in on them as well.
Excellent.
Shall we move on to some practical, a little practical test?
Yes, let's do that.
Excellent.
Okay, so we acknowledge that this has been, although not in depth, at least it's been fairly comprehensive, and we hope that you've all learned something from it that actually makes an impact in your day-to-day work. So we found it necessary to sort of, how do you structure this into a process? How do you actually begin with this? There's so much to do, and I doubt a lot of you are sitting on your hands being bored at work. So how do you actually get started with this? We found, as we started this presentation, incredibly useful to use LLMs. I highly suggest doing that and getting used to using LLMs in a day-to-day basis. And Simen has created 3 different prompts for you here that you can start using immediately. So
go
ahead, Simen.
Well, basically, so the idea here is for you to use your own LLM. So when we say LLM, we mean your Copilot or your ChatGPT, or sometimes Kristoffer today has referred to our favorite client, which is called Claude. Yeah, what we would like for you to do is to now try to go into this URL that I sent out in the chat, a link in the chat, where you can choose between one of these three different prompts that you can copy and paste into your ChatGPT or whatever you use. And the first one is a UTM builder, where you tell about your campaign, what you're promoting, which platform, target audience, and you get a ready-to-use UTM link. And the second is a privacy policy guide, where you paste in your current privacy policy, or tell that you don't have a privacy policy, and then you get a score and you get to understand what you're missing, and you can start drafting it, of course. So the idea here is, of course, also, just to learn how to work with these different topics that Kristoffer has gone through today. The last one is like a tool stack risk scorer. You list all the tools that you use, analytics, booking systems, AI tools, etc. So it would be cool if you would test this out now for the next couple of minutes on your own. And don't hesitate to ask a question if you have it, either by texting or talking with your microphone on. And I'll hope to hear feedback from one of you after these 5 minutes, and then I can also tell you that at the end of this session we will provide you with a link that will create a deliverable for you from today's presentation that is made with the AI agentic system. So it's a little bit of an experiment for us as well. But let's dive into the link in the chat. And we'll get back to you in 4 minutes.
While we wait for the last minute and people to finish up the prompts, two clarifications on my part. AI prompts in general, or AI question discussions with chatbot, depending on how the chatbot links your page as sort of this is a recommendation for something, it will either show up in direct or referral. So they should show up as the, I find often it just scraps everything or it's removed on the way to your page. It will just show up as direct none. Other times it will actually show up as the chatbot name /referral. I would have a look, try searching, try specifically for different pages, have a look at the different sources. That is on a specific level, but which channel grouping it ends up in varies on your setup. And I would also recommend that have a look at the structure of the prompts that Siemens has set up and have this as a baseline for your general queries. You can expand on these prompts, add stuff, change them to use for different sorts of purposes, and have them as sort of a tool basis for your marketing or web analytics in general. So, I hope some of you tested the prompts and how you managed to get something out of them. We find these sort of prompts as a good starting point, and just keep in mind that it is an AI, and even though you can now ask it to create your whole privacy policy, maybe have a manual look at that before you post it online. So a lot to do. Let's have a look at how you can start prioritizing your work going forward. I find most webinars are interesting and inspiring, but they should change something on the day after the webinar. You should have a task list, you should learn something and actually enable in your job. So Simon has graciously submitted this. Do you want to go through it, Simon?
Yes, we have created a agentic AI tool that creates a personal 4-week action plan for your analytics and GDPR compliance work. And the idea is pretty basic. You get a link in the chat in a minute now, and you will answer these 7 questions about your current situation. Which platforms do you use? What your biggest challenge, and how much time you have to do this, so it will not give you too many tasks, and how technical you are. So basically, if you're not that technical, it will try to find some tasks that are possible to do and and you get a plan tailored on your email week by week with specific actions. Maybe you can use them all, maybe you can use one of them, and I think that will probably our idea is that this is like the next 2.0 the version 2 of deliverables in all webinars going forward, having it more tailored to your fit. So I'll now put the link in the chat, and you will go there, and I hope you all go there and write in your situation in the boxes. And if you have any questions, we will be here for some minutes more. And after a minute or two, you will get your plan on in your inbox. And if it's not there, as always, sometimes our @try.no ends up in junk post. So check that if it's not in your regular inbox. If not, you can send us an email or chat with us here. I hope it will help you, and just jump in if you have any questions. We're only so many people here that we can actually even almost talk to each other. So don't be afraid. Do you have any comments, Kristoffer?
No, I don't. The tool will be open until midnight. Realistically, it runs on an open call, so we can't keep it up indefinitely. Also, we recommend doing it as quickly as possible to get the most out of it. Apart from that, I think we're running over. So I'd just like to thank for your attention, everyone. I hope you learned something out of this. And just reach out if there's anything with the last prompt we can help out with.
Thank you on all of our behalf as well, both mine from the project side, but for everyone participating. I loved it how you made this topic, which is pretty vast. You made it simple, and I loved it how you had within the beginning of your presentation that don't overcomplicate things. And I'm very, very impressed of the tools that you have given us and for our companies, as these are more than useful. So I'm more than certain that the participants have very good takeaways. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So thank you once more, both to you, Kristoffer, and to you, Semelenge, as well. This was a very good and insightful webinar over web analytics and also going to the GDPR compliances. For now, I want to wish everyone a lovely afternoon and maybe see you later on within our AETC webinars. I'm going to stop the recording now, but if you'd have any questions, you can also feel free to ask them after I shut down the recording.